So this is Spanish Eagles by Compass Games, and it is part of a long-standing series with not many games in it called the Eagles of the Empire series. I don't know who started that, but it started in the mid-90s with Borodino and has continued with under different companies with Ilau and what was the second one? Friedland, then Ilau, and then this one, Spanish Eagles, and I think there are a couple more, maybe in the Napoleonic Wars, maybe not, but this is definitely Napoleonic Wars. This box has the battles of Talavera and Albuera in it, and I have Albuera on the board, on the table, and I have it set up, although there aren't many units on the map. I'm going to try and explain some stuff about this. It's going to be easier to do that as we go along though, simply because there are so few units on the map, and the reason for that is because there's quite a bit of chrome in this battle, and one of those bits of chrome is that the Allies, the Anglo-Portuguese Spanish force, which is defending the town of Albuera under there, starts hidden, or a lot of it can start hidden in these areas. Any of these areas with a little I symbol in it, see 77 has got that little I symbol in it. Well, any of those which contain Allied forces, those are currently hidden. There's a setup chart over here showing where you've got to set up different elements of your force. So all this stuff here is currently on map, but hidden and written down on that bit of paper under there. Great. The French under Soult are going to bring on these forces up along here, and they're going to be entering on the roads here, this road leading to Albuera across the bridge, the road up over in that corner, and a couple of turns in they can start entering along this road here. Historically, I don't know much about this battle, and I went to find it in Chandler's Campaigns of Napoleon, and I couldn't find it in there. It covers the Peninsular Campaign up to about 1809, the campaigns of Napoleon, and then turns back to the sort of, Prussia, Russia escapades that followed. So it goes back to the Eastern Front, or the Napoleonic Eastern Front, and doesn't really return to Spain that I could find. I could be doing it a disservice, but I couldn't find this battle in here. So we have a write-up that comes with all the stuff in the box. Excellent components, by the way, these lovely sort of linen feel play aids showing you your setup, and we'll get to all this stuff with all your formation charts and so on. Really nice. My one grumble is that there aren't enough play aids to actually play the game with, so it doesn't seem to have any charts and tables on a play aid, so I've had to sort of type up the rules for artillery fire with all the different modifiers and the negative modifiers, and just basic things like movement allowances and stacking limits I've had to create on my own very basic cheat sheet here, because the game didn't come with anything. It could have done with another couple of bits of card in, just with all that stuff on. That grumble aside, the components in this are lovely, and these double-sized counters, sort of Great Battles of History style, if you're familiar with that, sort of SPQR or Alexander or whatever. Yeah, all very nice. And you'll also notice that the map is not hexes, the map is areas. They are beautiful maps. If I pan out, that's just a lovely map. But they are these irregular shapes, which restrict the movement of some of your units. That is one of the key play conceits in this game, is when you have these oversized units, and I'll just grab this is a replacement if Stuart loses steps. Let's just grab that for a second and bring it over here. If that's in an area like this, the yellow line down your infantry division shows which areas are your front, flank and rear. So The yellow line will point at your flank areas, so it points here, so that's a flank, and it points here, so that's a flank. Anything behind those flanks is to your rear, that would be these two, and anything in front of them is obviously to your front, that would be these areas. But if I were to turn him round and place him here, and you can place them in, anywhere they'll fit, essentially. I could place him here, and these would be my flanks, and that would be my rear, and everything else around here would be to my front. But if I were to jog him forward there, suddenly these would be my flanks, and this would all be rear, and only that would be my front. And there are positions where something just won't fit. That does not work. You cannot be in that position because you're not allowed to bust out over the sides of the map. So infantry has these. Certainly, these double-sized infantry has these restrictions in terms of its facing and positioning. Artillery also has to have positioning. Let's find an artillery counter. So that has the same thing. These also have facing and positioning, but obviously they're a lot easier to get into the zones. I'm not entirely sure whether they're allowed to bust out over the edges of zones, because the examples of play seem to show they do, and the rules only seem to talk about long infantry counters. Cavalry could just be stacked and stuffed in areas, and it doesn't even have facing. It's so mobile that it's not considered to have facing in the same sense. So, what's happening here then? Let's talk a little bit about the flow of play, and to do that we'll talk a little bit about how the armies are set up as well. So for each battle you'll get an organisational sort of structure chart. Here's the British, there it is, and here's the Spaniards down here. And this tells us that our army commander is Beresford, and he has 5 formations under his command. He has Stuart's 2nd Division, he has Alton's King's German Legion, he has Lumley's Cavalry, and he has 2 Portuguese formations, Cole's Division and Otway's Cavalry. And you can see some of them on here. So Otway's Portuguese Cavalry is there. Cole's Portuguese Infantry, his 4th Infantry Division, is in here. The King's German Legion under Alton is holding Albuera with its artillery and an infantry brigade. And Lumley's British Cavalry is sitting behind him on a hilltop, I think. Yes, on a hilltop. Great. So what's each of these is a formation. So this is a formation here, these are a formation here, this is a formation here, that's a formation there, and Stuart, who's currently hidden somewhere, but there's Stuart with his infantry division, a small infantry brigade and his artillery, and that's a formation. And essentially what we're going to do is each turn the army commanders are going to roll a 6-sided dice and subtract that number from their initiative rating, in Beresford's case 3. And if he gets more than 3, he's got no actions and he can't do anything. If he gets less than 3, he subtracts that number from his initiative. So if he rolls 2, then he has 1 point to spend and he can activate 1 formation. And then that formation checks if it's in command, and then it goes around doing whatever it wants to do, moving, firing, fighting, etc. And then having done that, we switch over to this side where Soult, who is commanding all the French, with his 5 initiative rolls a dice, and he rolls a 2, and he gets to activate 3 formations. And he has got 4 infantry divisions under Gazan, Godineau, Girard and Verla. And then he's got 4 cavalry units, let's call them, I don't know whether they'd be brigades or divisions, but anyway, he's got 4 of those, and they would each be a formation, and he could activate 3 out of any of that lot. And then once he was done, we'd come back over here, and so on. And you move backwards and forwards. When your leaders have activated, you flip them over, and they've got a rear side that says activated. If we find Beresford there, we just flip them over, see it says activated, and you'd know you couldn't use them again. And when one of two things can happen. Either both sides can run out of things that they can activate, or everyone can fail to activate things time after time, and then the turn ends one way or the other, either through both sides failing to get any activations going, or them both running out of things to use. Okay, and that's essentially the sort of flow of play, is this moving backwards and forwards, trying to get activations and then trying to do useful things with them. The French, because this game had this scenario had quite a lot of special rules. The French are allowed to determine what their formation, sort of their army structure is in this case, and there are some special rules for them. So let's just talk about that. What they're going to do is have Gazan and Godino as individual formations, but they're going to join Girard and Verla up to be a single formation, with Verla being subordinate to Girard. So Girard is the formation leader and Verla is a separate force under his command. And the reason for doing that is because this battle was a sort of Soul's attempt at a Napoleonic sort of outflank, and so he is planning to bring on these two infantry divisions into this area over here, across the river from Albuera, and set some artillery up and start pounding away at whatever British he can get line of sight to. He's also going to send some grenadiers. He's planning to send some grenadiers off to the river here to see if he can find anywhere to ford the river, which is a special rule in this game, and perhaps then open up a threat on the British flank over here, or the Allied flank. Meanwhile, these two infantry divisions here and all his cavalry are planning to come on over this area and force their way and try and get across this stream into this area around behind the British position. And that's their aim. Now, with that in mind, Girard is likely, a lot of this stuff is likely to be out of command range of Soul, who's got a range of 3 areas for command, and so stuff will be having to use its own initiative, and Girard's the best commander with his 3 initiatives, so they're hoping to allow him to command effectively using his own initiative rating rather than being in command of his army leader. There are special rules for the cavalry, which means that La Tour Maubourg is always in command, so he can operate independently and can command any of the other cavalry leaders. So if the cavalry sticks together under La Tour Maubourg, he's almost a separate little army commander for the cavalry corps. Similarly, over here on the Allied side, they also have all these Spaniards. They have all this Spanish force, and they essentially have 2 army commanders, because they also have Blake, who's got 4 initiative and got all this force with him. So the Allies can choose on their turn to roll either to activate Anglo-Portuguese under Beresford, or to try for Spanish forces under Blake. Right, that's enough. I've been talking enough. This will become clearer as we get underway. I don't really want to explain all the ins and outs of the rules, but it does look a lot of fun. I've played 5 or 6 turns of it, again in my kind of ironing out the mistakes phase, and also my starting to appreciate some of the finer points of the game phase. There's things I'm still missing and things I'm still learning, but I'm looking forward to this a lot. Here we are then with Spanish Eagles, and this was the position we reached at the end of turn 1, with some French cavalry, the Tour Maubourg and Briche over here. Soult bringing on 2 infantry divisions down this road and setting up his artillery to start taking a shot at Albuera. Alton responded. He fired at this French group here this French division here, but couldn't get any shot on target. And his artillery here looked like it was going to take a beating if it stayed, because the French have got 4 points of artillery there with an artillery commander, and that was going to just give them far too much firepower for this stuff to stay where it was just too exposed on that hill. And similarly, it was going to start taking fire from here, and it was going to start, there was 8 dice with pluses because of the artillery commander here on half of it about to come in. That artillery was not going to survive the exchange of fire, so Alton ordered that to withdraw back up onto this hilltop. Lumley headed out onto the flank over here just to keep watch with his cavalry, and Cole took his forces off the road and spread out his infantry. But everyone, apart from Alton here, who's in the town, which provides a lot of cover, everyone else is trying to keep out of artillery fire at the moment. So the French have got these very powerful batteries set up, and the British Portuguese don't want to play. Saul then passed because he wants to keep some of his stuff. He'd actually rolled quite a good roll, and if you've got activations, you have to use them. So, which is why he was just going to bring the Tour Maubourg on, but he had to bring Briche and Bouvier on as well, and he decided to bring Bouvier on up here, where Saul can command him, so that they can get some combined arm benefits if they move forward with infantry, cavalry and artillery all in the same area. So they're looking maybe to get some combined armed effects by bringing some of Bouvier's cavalry in to join these groups. What else can I say? That's it for turn 1, and we'll move into the 9 AM turn. Okay, right at the start of the 9 AM turn here at Spanish Eagles at Albuera. One of the bits of chrome in this game is that the day at Albuera was very stormy. There was lots of heavy rain, low cloud and heavy rain rolling around these hills. And so there's a weather table that you roll on here, although I've got an errated version on this printout here. But anyway, there's weather rolling around, and you can also see from here that from 4 PM you start making rolls to see whether there's going to be constant rain for the rest of the day. So you start rolling against these numbers. But until then, we're rolling on a table to see whether there are sudden showers, downpours in any part of the combat area, and this 3 means that there is. That means that there is one area where we're going to have heavy, really sudden rainfall, showers, and so on. So we'll roll an area up, and we've got a 9, and then we'll check this map, and zone 9 is down here. Okay, that's really not going to affect play terribly much, as you can see. That is zone B, and you can see everywhere with a B on it has got squally weather. So I'll get those tokens on just so that we can see it in play. And so there you can see we've marked up those areas with squall counters right over on the sort of right flank of the battlefield as far as the Allies are concerned, and potentially where some Spanish troops might be located in these sort of hidden zones down here. And the effects of those, were we to get them somewhere where it was affecting the battle, the effects of those squalls are artillery cannot fire in or out of a squall zone, so they can protect you from artillery. Units in a squall area are hidden, so you can remove them from the map and use hidden movement. You can just use, a bit of paper to write down where your units are moving to. So they can move invisibly, and be replaced on the map later. Units in a squall area must pass a morale check in order to move. Cavalry charges and assaults by cavalry are given a +1 when attacking out of a squall, because they can attack with surprise. That's quite interesting. And units attacked in such a way may not attempt to form a square in the face of a charge. So if you can get cavalry into one of these and attack out of it, that can be really quite effective. And I believe that's because it did actually happen at this battle. Anyway, we've got a squall on the battlefield, and it's probably not going to get involved in play in any way, because these cavalry can't get all the way down here. But yeah, that squall's introduced. Let's push on with a French roll to see how many activations Saul's going to get at the start, assuming he wants to activate at this point. And of course he does, because he wants to fire his artillery. So he's got a 2, and he's going to get 3 activations. So with his 3 activations, Saul was able to get various things done. Gazan in here bombarded Albuera to no effect. So Saul ordered Godinot forward to get within range so that they can start putting pressure on as well. Bouvier split his dragoons up between these 2 infantry divisions and sent some out to support the grenadiers out here on the French right, and those grenadiers were looking for a way to ford the river, and have located a ford up there on the edge of the map here, and so the French will be able, if they want to press through onto the British far left round here, where Cole's division is waiting for them in the woods. So that was Saul's activation. I'm wondering what the British, Portuguese, Spanish force want to do now. They're kind of locked into a waiting game. They may even pass, but I think Alton wants to fire his artillery, so we'll see if Beresford can get an activation here. He can't. He rolls a 6, so it goes back to the French, to Saul. And the thing is, Saul doesn't want to. So the problem Saul's got is if he rolls a 1, he'd have to activate 4 formations, and he's only got 2 more on map to activate, which would mean bringing 2 more on. And he doesn't want to bring those 2 on, because they'd have to come up either here or over here. He wants to wait till the 10 AM turn so that he can start moving using this road entry point. So Saul's going to pass for now. A very quiet start to the battle. And I think that means that the turn ends, because we've had a failure to activate and then a pass. I wonder if that failure to activate counts. Let me check. Okay, just been reading that up. And you can't strictly pass. You can roll to activate and then pass, and you can then decline to move or use the formations, and you then have to flip them to be activated. So you can't just keep passing. So the French have to roll an activation here. They get a 4. That means that they can move 1 formation. Okay, so what they'll do, they'll slide Breach, actually 1, 2, 3 down here, and he's activated. And then the British will try and activate again and get a 2, and now they've got 1 activation. So it looks like the turn's continuing here. Question is, what do they want to do? So the British have chosen to activate Alton here. I hadn't realised I hadn't done that. So Alton will activate. He does not want to. Well, he's in command. Beresford is hidden, but he is in command. He could do a cavalry charge. He has no cavalry. The next thing he could do is assign some artillery to his infantry. Well, you do that if you want your artillery attached to infantry units for kind of assaulting purposes, to get your guns right up front with infantry as they come forward to attack. It's a sort of combined arms Napoleonic manoeuvre, but we don't want to do that. We just want to stay in cover in the town and bombard, which is the next segment. We just want to fire some shots at these guys. So we have got 2 strength points of artillery. We're firing at a range of 1, 2 into this group here. And so we get 2 dice with our 2 strength points. We have got no modifiers to our dice, so we just hit on 6s. And we've got we've got a 1 and a 2. That's rubbish. We haven't hit anything with our artillery bombardment. So the only question now is whether Alton wants to move anything that he's got. So he could move his infantry or these artillery. He couldn't move the artillery that fired. And the answer is no, so we're back at the end of Alton's activation, back over to Soule, who is going to roll a 5 and get 1 activation. He's going to come over here and get Le Tour Maubourg to come down here, and that's him done. And we're back onto let's do a Spanish activation. He gets a 6 and fails. Soule therefore gets a 3 and gets 2 more activations. So he's going to pass with his last 2. That will be Girard is 1 formation with Verla as a subsidiary force, and Bron would be his other formation. So he is out of formations, and so now we're just onto the Allies to see what they want to do with the rest of the 9 AM turn. End of the 9 AM turn then here at Spanish Eagles at the Battle of Albuera, and Soule and Alton, these forces here, the French divisions and the British Brigade, just King's German Legion, exchanged some artillery fire. You saw me move up Godinot here into a more advanced position. The ford got found. Cole got shifted out slightly further to the left to cover any advance across the river that may come. Otway moved his cavalry up a bit closer, sent some in here to, you can see some cavalry down under the artillery there, to bolster Alton and this artillery up on the hill here. And the French cavalry, Le Tour Maubourg, started scouting down towards this stream with Briche, but we've hit the 10 o'clock turn now, where the Soule is awaiting the rest of his infantry to start coming on and testing the Allied positions further here over to the south of Albuera. So let's just make a quick roll. I think I flipped everyone over who was activated to their ready side again. I don't see anyone with an activated showing, so let's give the weather a quick roll to see whether we get any more storms. A 12 is definitely not going to be any bad weather. Let's see what Soule's going to roll up then for activations. He gets a 3. That's 2 activations for Soule to start off the 10 AM turn. So Soule here with 2 activations. That's why I've got the blue dice, just to remind me. He's kind of got a couple of options. He could activate these 2 infantry divisions, Godinot and Gazan, and pop off his artillery and see if he can't have some impact on Alton down here. The trouble with that is that the town is giving a 75% penalty to the strength of his artillery, and that means that instead of getting 4 dice, he's getting, with each of these divisions, he's getting 1 dice. So something else he could try would be to start trying to get the infantry moving round across the river over there, but that might be tricky since Cole's moved to block that off. But this is an option. He could pop off the artillery because he wants to be firing first at the Brits down here. The other option would be to activate Girard here, this is all one formation, so he could activate Girard and Bron, two off-board formations, and bring those on. Another option would be to maybe activate Le Tourmauberg and Briche down here and slide them across the stream here and see if they can start locating anything. So these are his choices. I think he's going to bring the rest of his forces on. I think let's see if we can't get things moving and start putting some pressure on this Allied position. So the entry hex, or the entry area, doesn't cost any movement points. So I'm just going to set Girard up here, and we'll sort of do it one division at a time. So we would go through for these two formations. You would do every step of the turn. You wouldn't do it formation by formation. You do it step by step, if that makes sense. So where that allows you to do sort of combined arms stuff, where you've got infantry, artillery, and cavalry all acting in coordination. If you can activate enough units to get all that happening. So here we would do. We would take all these forces and we would start off by checking that they're in command, but that's not really applicable right now because they're coming onto the map. Then we would do a cavalry charge with any cavalry that we wanted to do charges with. We do an assignment segment where we can assign artillery to infantry, which we might want to do if we want to assault with the infantry. We might want artillery embedded into it to strengthen it. Then we would do bombardment with our artillery. Then we do movement, and then we do assaults. Well, we're not going to be doing most of that because obviously we're just going to end up doing movement as we bring these forces on board. So let me see what I can do here. So Girard's going to come along in road movement, and this area doesn't cost anything. So he can come half, 1, 1.5, 2, and that would be his 2 movement used up. And now we've got to put him in here in a way that makes sense. So he's really got to end up like that, really. Yeah, somewhere in here, but pointing in that direction. So that, you know, he's facing off against Lumley's cavalry up here at the moment. He can sort of stay in road column there because he's actually lined up as if he's in road column like that. That's pretty cool. And we can do the same with his artillery, I think. So we can bring this on half 1, half 2, and that could end up here and here. So he's got his artillery and his infantry in there. Girard having it activated. We'll just pop him on there like that. And now I've got to work out what to do with Verla and the cavalry. So let's see how that looks. And we ended up in this position here with Girard having crossed the stream, Verla not quite making it, and his cavalry, Bron, protecting the flanks, or attempting to, although there's a very exposed flank here for this infantry. And also Girard is actually in command range of Soult, who's 1, 2, 3 areas away, which is a bit of a bonus, so he doesn't have to rely on his own initiative at this from here. Soult can keep him in command, so that's good for the French as well in terms of keeping them moving. And now it's the opportunity of the Allies to response, and they've got to give this some thought. So after some deliberation, the Allies decided to try and activate Blake. He rolled a 4 there, or activate with Blake, I should say, who rolled a 4. 4 is his initiative, so he was able to activate 1 unit, because if you roll equal to your initiative, you get one command. He spent that to activate Loy, who was in here and was in danger of being discovered during a French turn, and that wouldn't really suit him to get bumped into while the French were moving and acting. So he pulled out up onto this hill to keep a watch on the French cavalry brigades moving around over there, and to get out of the way of this infantry and artillery moving forward. And we're back over on the French. Let's give them a roll. I'll use the blue die for the French, and they've got a 3. That's 2 activations for Saul. Have to have a think about what he wants to do. I suppose a natural thing at this point would be to fire off the artillery here, so let's give that a go. Let's activate Gazan and Godino here, and we don't want to do any. They're both in command with Saul just there. We have to look at cavalry charges. We don't want to do those. We don't want to assign any artillery to any infantry, so we just want to bombard and then move. So let's do the bombardment first. So it's a sort of dice pool system. We've got 4 artillery points in here, trying to shoot down into here. The defence of the town, 75% reduction in artillery strength means we get, instead of getting 4 dice, we get 1 dice, and we have an artillery leader in there giving us a +1 on that dice. So let's just grab a purple die, throw it in there. A 5 + 1 is a 6. That's a hit. The first hit has to be on a long infantry unit if possible, so the King's German Legion just took some casualties from that bombardment, and I flipped onto their B side, so they're now slightly reduced. So that's not good. And then similarly, Godino up there can take a shot. He'll have 1 dice. He needs a 6 to hit. That misses. So Alton's just taken some casualties there. And now it's movement from those 2 infantry divisions. The cavalry under Bouvier couldn't move. Only the infantry. And I'm just wondering about the wisdom of pushing these grenadiers across the river here through the ford, which is 1 movement point to move over the ford and 1 into the space. 2 movement to face off against Myers there, or whether we just get murdered. Don't know. I mean, he's 3 strength 4 morale, we're 2 strength 3 morale. He's in woods though. We wouldn't want to attack him. What would the woods do if we try to assault him in woods? Let's have a look. Woods. Assault, -25% attacker. So would that make any difference to us if we were on 2 dice for our 2 strength? Let's have a look at our firepower modifiers. 2 dice, 25%. Yeah, we'd have 1 dice against him. He'd have 3 dice against us. That would be a really bad trade to attack him in those woods. He's got us covered. Pushing across the river there right now is not a good plan. So with that sorted, we're not moving forward here. We've done a bit of damage to Alton, given him something to think about. So that is us done for our activation, and we're back over on the British. So Beresford rolled a 1. He's got 2 activations. He is going to activate Alton in here, and also he's going to activate Lumley in here. So going through the activation sequence then, which I wish I had written down somewhere, but I keep having to look at the back page of the rulebook for it, which is in quite small print. Never mind, it's fine. It's command determination. Well, they're both in command, I know that much. Cavalry charge. No, Lumley isn't charging directly into the front of that infantry. That looks like a very silly thing to do. Assignment segment, there's no assignment going on. Bombardment segment, yes, we do want to do some bombardment. Alton's artillery here. He's got, these are out of range. They've only got a range of 2, which doesn't quite get us there. It only, oh, well, does it? 1, 2. Oh no, because this is blocking. It does get us there, I think, but this +1 elevation blocks us, even though we're on a +1. But this can fire into here. Let's give it a shot with 2 dice. So let's just grab a random 2 dice and try and roll 6. No hits for Alton's artillery. That's the bombardment segment done. And now it's movement, and what we really wanted to do was take Lumley here and drop him. Now this is Gully. That costs an extra movement point. The way I'm reading this, it's not, well, I'd say it's not super clear, but I think it's reasonably clear. But we're on an elevation of 1, and if we want to move here, it's also an elevation of 1. So we're not changing elevation, and so that ought not to cost us any movement points, any additional movement points to go from elevation 1 to elevation 1. However, the kind of map graphics make it clear that this is a kind of separate hill from this one, and therefore we're going down and back up again. And the way that the game shows that is with these little moon-shaped devices, which show that there's a gully in here, which makes sense. This is a hill, this is a hill, there's a gully between them. This is a hill, this is a hill, this is a hill, gully between them, and so on. And what I think that means is that we don't pay for the 1 to 1, for moving from height 1 to 1. Instead, we pay for this gully, which still costs an extra movement point. So I think what we're paying is 2 to move in here, 1 for the move, nothing for the elevation change, which is instead paid for by the gully going down and back up again. Whereas, for example, if we were moving from here to here, we pay 1 plus 1 for the elevation change, which would be 2. From this height onto this, down and up again, 2. And we've got 3 with the cavalry. That was an awfully long-winded explanation about gullies, but there you go. And we will move them in here. And that is a setup move, and what we're trying to do with Lumley's cavalry there, these heavy 3rd Dragoon Guards, heavy cavalry, 4th Dragoons, 19th Light Dragoons, what we're trying to do with those is firstly screen them with these woods from this artillery here. So this is, I don't think, on an elevation, and even if it were, the woods would screen them nonetheless. So we're making sure we can't get shot by artillery thanks to these woods here, and we're placing ourselves on the flank of this infantry here with a charge through this zone. Cavalry charges in this game have to be at a target 2 zones away, so we're lining up and prepping a charge into this guy's flank. And we know that this zone isn't wide enough for him to turn the side on, so we're giving the French the problem of how to defend this area to keep this guy protected, in much the same way that the French are giving the Allies the problem of how to defend this area when there's 8 points of artillery all keyed in on it, ready to blow away anything that tries to stop a bridge crossing. And now the French are trying to work out how they're going to exploit this space here to get in and start tackling this. And they're also wondering if and when they head that way. So lots going on here, even though it doesn't look like there's many counters on the board. It's there's a lot to think about, and there's really pleasing interactions between the ways you can use units and combine your infantry and artillery and cavalry under different commands. It's really it's really firing the imagination, this one, and doing things that Napoleonic games should do, you know, giving you that sort of three-handed arm of your army, and forcing you to think about how to combine them to get things done in difficult terrain, in difficult conditions. So here's our position at the end of the 10 a.m. turn, here at Albuera in Spanish Eagles, part of the Eagles of the Empire series. And you can see from the turn track we're at just on 10 a.m, but the turns finish at 11 p.m, so there's quite a long way to go. Out here on the French left, Latour, Maubourg and Briche have crossed this little stream, scouting around, looking for ways to put pressure on. But this sort of central push across the stream by these two French divisions prompted some activity from the Spaniards, who have taken to the hills and tried to set themselves up in two good positions here. So these hexagons on a hill mean that you have an all-round defence in that area. So the +1 means it's elevated, and the hexagon means that you have 360-degree protection. In other words, if you take that off, you can see you're camped out on a hill, defended from all directions. So the infantry don't have a facing, the cavalry don't have a facing anyway, but that just means that they're much better protected from this cavalry coming in over here than they would be if the infantry had a facing. And obviously the infantry cavalry mix will make this quite intimidating for the French to charge, especially uphill, and with these very nasty slope markers as well, plus the elevation shift, means this is actually a very good defensible position. And the French will have to work right round here and try and come at it from a different angle to attack. Similarly, the Spanish have set up an elevated position here, I think, again, with the hexagon, with the 360-degree defence. They've put some artillery in there. They've got two infantry units and Blake's in there as well, commanding it. They don't have the slopes in their favour particularly. There's something in here that doesn't look great for them, but anyway, it's reasonably well defended in there. The big problem that they've got is lack of artillery. These two infantry divisions have got scary amounts of artillery with them. The Allies are outnumbered quite badly in artillery. And so the French may well just try and find positions where they can bombard. The Allies have set up this this potential attack into the flank of Girard here by this cavalry. That could be very, very problematic if it goes ahead. So the French have to try and defend against that pretty swiftly. So yeah, that's the situation we've got, and as we saw, because I rolled it on camera, Alton just took some damage from the artillery fire off outside of Albuera here. So that's where we're at. Still quite a lot of Allied troops not on the map yet. Stuart's infantry and artillery specifically, but also Desaias' infantry division is somewhere hidden, and a lot of weak, individually weak but collectively quite strong cavalry under Castaños as well there, somewhere undiscovered as well. So coming into 10 a.m, I'm going to wrap this up now and probably join all these together and upload it. Let's do a very quick weather check for the 11 a.m. turn, just to see if we're going to get any rain, downpours, squalls. A 7, I don't think that's going to be enough for 11 a.m. 11 a.m, no, needed a 2, 3 or 4 for there to be squalls. So clear weather, well, you know, cloudy weather, but nothing crazy happening at the moment. So let's load this as it is.